30 seconds and counting. The guidance system will go internal at the 17-second mark. Now 25 seconds. We have complete clearance to launch. We are go. 20. We'll go on internal power with the vehicle. We now get indications from our status board that all is still going well. Second stage tanks are pressurized as our countdown continues. The vehicle now on the battery power on the vehicle, and all is still going well. The astronauts are go launch vehicle.
Good evening to everybody here in the Western Hemisphere, with the exception, well, of course, and then folks out in Europe. It's good, very early morning to you guys. Thank you very much for joining me, and good, more realistic time of day. That is a decent time of day for everybody in the Pacific Rim. Thanks very much for joining me. And yes, for once, people in Australia, people in New Zealand get an opportunity to join my live streams at a time that's a little bit more sane as we prepare for a historic launch from Japan. And this is a launch that really hasn't attracted a great deal of attention in general coverage, and there's a reason for that. I think that it's nothing that exciting about the rocket or its capabilities, at least on the surface. And so if it's not all that exciting compared to SpaceX or whatever, then not a lot of people pay attention to it. But people who have been following my channel for a long time, you guys know that I like to look for different sorts of things that are exciting and things to get angry about. But before I get angry tonight, let's go ahead and talk about where everybody is checking in from. By the way, Anton Nim, thank you so much for your contribution tonight. And we had another contribution from Real American. It's a huge thing, guys. Thank you so much for that. Makes a big difference to me right now, given the state of YouTube and Google adverts. So thank you very much for that. So we have folks, the Texas Tank Watchers in the house, Valles Marineris. Yes, that's fantastic. South Jersey, Robert Morgan. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. And I had the answer to that is being shipped out this week. Being shipped out this week. All right. So we're finally getting these taken care of bit by bit, and you're actually next on the list along with a few other people, and the shipment is coming this week. Spencer, Massachusetts, Ohio, Indianapolis, Charleston, South Carolina. Thank you so much. Ireland, Swansea, hello, welcome back. Swansea, by the way, Swansea is my son's favorite place in the world. He loves Swansea and Wales more than any place else. New York's his favorite city. But as far as a region that he likes to go to, Swansea in the UK is his favorite. Georgia, Helena, Montana, Brazil. Hello, Brazil. Hope things are going well for you. Virginia, Texas, Myrtle Beach. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. Australia, Alexandria, Virginia. Thank you. Roswell, New Mexico. Hello, and welcome, Roswell. Massachusetts, thank you so much for joining us today. Belgium, hello, Belgium, and good, very early morning to you. Canada, checking in. Queensland, Australia. Argentina, hello, Argentina. Southern Ontario, Waco, Texas. Over 200 people tuned in right now. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you tuning into this. Tampa, Vermont, Illinois, Nebraska, Houston, Melbourne, Florida. Man, all over the place. That's really fantastic. Usually we have a lot more folks from Europe, especially the UK on my live streams, but it is a crazy early time for Europe right now. And my producer, by the way, is British, and he is running this right now in the dead of night in Yorkshire. So please express your deep appreciations to my producer, ASN in Yorkshire. Panama, Yorkshire, hello, Yorkshire. So there you go. You know how that feels right now. Let's see who else we got checking in. Maryland, Louisiana, hello. Philadelphia, Arlington, Texas, Greenville, hello, Rick. Thanks for joining us again. Once again, Rick, my previous boss in another life at an organization called The Turning Point that houses hundreds and hundreds of low-income people recovering from addiction. They not only give them housing and addiction support, but also jobs and transportation to their jobs, which that is the way to get out of addiction. One of the best ways to get out of and a sense of self-worth. Okay, Huntsville, Alabama, hello. Yorkshire, once again, shout out to ASN. Yeah, they're absolutely. Hong Kong, hello, Hong Kong. Thank you so much for joining us here today. I hope things are going well there right now. So yeah, definitely. Thanks so much. Central Florida, UK, Subax again from Canada. Thanks so much. Really do appreciate that. What we have here, I guess that's Hawaii, I think is where that's checking in from. Virginia, California. Wow, all over the place as usual. Really, really do appreciate you guys tuning in. So let me explain why I'm angry about what's going on here. The reason I'm angry is because Japan has a lot to offer Artemis. And it's not just a potential or something they could do. It's something that they want to do, something that they've expressed a strong desire to support the United States in our efforts to return to the moon to stay. And of course, those of you who have checked out my latest video on this subject that came out yesterday, you know what I'm talking about. By the way, real quick, Virginia, California, Derbyshire, UK, thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. Do we already have a cancellation? I hope we don't. Just saw it. Okay. All right, just want to make sure that is not the case. In any event, I apologize if I'm misinterpreting what was just said there. Sorry, get confused about these things occasionally. All right, so the thing that really annoys me tremendously right now, in terms of what Japan is bringing to the table, this rocket, has a large enough fairing to accommodate a great number of different things. This includes, of course, every human-rated spacecraft that we currently have right now. In other words, H3 has the capability to carry Crew Dragon or Starliner, assuming you really wanted to do that. And most importantly, Dream Chaser. Dream Chaser was actually designed to be compatible with the H3 rocket and also with Ariane 6. Anything with a fairing of about 5.2 meters or larger can carry Dream Chaser. But the whole idea that Sierra Space had behind Dream Chaser was to make it compatible with H3 so that Asian missions could launch from Japan and land in Japan. And they already have that set up right now. So not only are Asian missions... We're still good for launch. Okay, I'm sorry. I just misinterpreted some stuff coming across the wire. So, that's one thing to keep in mind, is Japan not only has the theoretical capability, at least when this rocket actually flies, to launch Dream Chaser, but also to carry astronauts into orbit. Their own astronauts. They could theoretically do that. And I've talked to Sierra Space about this subject, and they are very excited about the prospect of selling a Dream Chaser to JAXA so that Japanese astronauts Japanese astronauts have the opportunity to go to space without having to wait on NASA. And just recently, oh, Tin Man, thank you so much for being an angry advocate. By the way, you do that by just hitting that little join button, and you can join my Discord server as a result of that. And of course, that allows you to communicate directly with me, but more importantly, with people on my Discord server who are heavily involved in the space industry, people who work directly for a lot of these companies that you hear about all the time, and so know a lot about what's going on. And that's where I get a lot of my information from too, as far as that's concerned. So got a great team there. So you'll receive a notification as to how to join the Discord server. So thank you so much, Tin Man, for becoming part of that. So in any event, not only does Japan have the theoretical capability of sending their own astronauts into space, but also H3 has the capability, at least in theory, of delivering resupply to the lunar gateway, delivering resupply to the lunar surface, and also deliver a mobile habitat, which I talked about before, a mobile habitat from Toyota, a huge lunar rover with 13 cubic meters worth of habitable space, pressurized space, which is more space than Crew Dragon has, by the way. Put it on the moon and it can relocate up to 1,000 kilometers in between landing sites. What that means is once one of these things gets deployed to the moon, and their plan, by the way, JAXA's plan is to put one of these on the moon in 2029, perfect timing for when NASA's really going to need it. You'll have the ability for the small number of astronauts that are going to be involved in these first missions to the moon to have a mobile habitat. They really won't need much in the way of a habitat aside from this Toyota moon cruiser, as it is called. So look at all of these things that Japan brings to the table. But here's the deal. Has NASA actually built a schedule as to, okay, JAXA, you're footing the bill for all of this, and so we want you to bring us our supplies on this date. Let's go ahead and start making plans for that. You want us, bring us a rover in 2029. Let's go ahead and set a tentative date for that. Let's build you into our schedule. And they haven't done it. And the NASA Office of Inspector General, as I recently reported, were highly critical of that. That's one of the biggest criticisms that they leveled against NASA right now, is the fact that given how little funding NASA has for Artemis compared to the amount of funding that Apollo had back in the day, we need all the help we can get. So why are we not engaging these international partners right away? Is it because Japan is unreliable or something? Because they're not. They've been one of the most reliable partners and allies that America could ever ask for. So it certainly isn't a matter of not being a reliable partner or anything. So why isn't this happening? And that's one thing that really pisses me off. And after this rocket launches tonight, hopefully it will. Hopefully this goes very, very well. Then NASA will have no reason, no excuse to not engage Japan in these very important missions. Because for every resupply mission and every mission to the lunar surface, you don't have to pay for. That saves NASA hundreds of millions of dollars that they can use on other things, like SLS, for example, and how insanely expensive that is. So on the surface, the reports we're getting tonight, the media reports we're getting about this H3 launch sounds so unexciting. It's just a mapping satellite that's being launched. It weighs a couple of tons. It'll go to sun synchronous orbit so that its solar panels can get a constant source of energy, but really, just a mapping satellite to enhance the constellation that is already there. That's all it theoretically is supposed to be doing. But there's a lot more happening, a lot more at stake with this launch than just that. We're talking about a very important partner that could take a huge weight off of NASA's shoulders if this launch were to go well tonight. And I wish that there were more people talking about this, because it's important. And it's not like this is theoretical. It's not like somebody has an idea that maybe we could collaborate or whatever. JAXA has made it very clear that this is what they want to do, and they're willing to pay for it. By the way, Graham, thank you so much for the 20 quid. Really do appreciate that. Thanks. And once again, guys, thanks so much for tuning in tonight and for supporting this. It's a tough time for us creators at the moment, and you guys have been so incredibly supportive and generous through this whole thing. I really, really appreciate that. Almost 300 people tuned in, by the way. Please like and please subscribe to this channel. I'm now at 3,750 or so subscribers away from that magic 100K, getting super, super close as far as that's concerned. Really, really appreciate that. We got a bot running around right now. It looks like maybe just noticed that in the comments. Maybe so. Like I say, when you start getting bots and you start getting attacked on your chat, that's when you know you're successful. When you attract the bots, you know that you've got a good stream going on. So I'm honored by that. Anytime these things show up as irritating as they are, they know you know that you're having something successful going on. So how will H3 actually handle this lunar resupply? How are they supposed to do that? Well, there's been a resupply vessel actually that Japan has had for quite some time. It's called the HTV, and the latest version of that resupply ship is the HTVX, and it can carry a lot of payload. We're talking about 4.5 tons worth of pressurized cargo and an additional 1.75 tons worth of unpressurized cargo. That's more cargo than ISS has ever needed, and it's more supplies than Artemis will ever need in a single mission. And the difference with HTVX is its capability of traveling interplanetary. It is not a reusable ship, but at the same time, if you're talking about a resupply ship going all the way to the moon, it's probably not going to be reusable anyway. For example, Falcon Heavy and the Dragon XL, that's supposed to be handling most of the resupply, that is not a reusable ship either. So we'll see. Obviously the HTVX, very exciting ship, new innovation from JAXA, and definitely looking for big things from that as well. So once again, I think in many ways the media are kind of selling Japan a little short tonight in terms of what this really means for the long-term benefit of spaceflight in general, and especially for Artemis. I think that lots of big things could come out of this launch tonight if it goes well, and if everybody decides to exploit it properly, if NASA really decides to aggressively engage engage JAXA in helping us make Artemis a success, which is absolutely what we should be doing anyway. But there are some big questions behind the launch tonight. This is far from a certain thing. As a matter of fact, I have a feeling that we have a lot of engineers, a lot of people at JAXA who are chewing their nails off right now, because these are brand new engines. They utilize a new type of cycle that is far more efficient, and by the way, has never ever been attempted on a single stage rocket before, on the first stage rather of a rocket before. That's never ever been tried. So this is brand new technology that they're implementing. What it does is it takes the propellant, the hydrogen, uses hydrogen and oxygen, which usually doesn't produce a great deal of thrust. It takes that hydrogen propellant and uses it to cool many of the components of the engine as it's in operation. So it serves a dual purpose. It cools down the engine before it gets used as propellant. And in the process, it gets heated up, of course, while it's cooling these components off. And when it gets heated up, it gets transitioned into a gaseous form from a liquid form, which is what you need to have happen to the hydrogen anyway before you deliver it into the vacuum chamber. And then boom, off it goes. So that this extremely efficient use of propellant, which allows you to deliver a better result, a higher amount of thrust, longer ISP, that sort of thing, out of a hydrogen and oxygen engine, which doesn't generally deliver nearly as much thrust as methane or methalox, for example, or kerosene. Those deliver more thrust. So this improved system allows this type of engine to be more efficient and more effective. So, and by the way, this is about the only real exciting innovation in the H3. Aside from the fact that the components are much less expensive, the manufacturing is a lot more efficient, and another big thing is the price. Thank you so much. Really do appreciate that, Joe Pilot. Thank you so much for your generous support. Once again, really appreciate you guys coming through for me tonight. It means a lot, let me tell you. So the components, of course, manufacturing processes, etc., for H3 are more efficient and less expensive. And a pretty exciting thing, given the fact that this is an expendable rocket, this seems almost impossible actually, is that they're going to be able to launch it, at least in the configuration we're seeing tonight, for less than $40 million. In other words, undercutting Falcon 9 by a great deal, by a large margin. How are they doing this? That's a good question. Honestly, I think it may be because they're receiving supplemental income from the Japanese government. I hope that's not the case. I hate to see government subsidies coming in a competitive market. I don't like that. But if that is, if they're somehow managing to do this just because the components and assembly process are that much lower cost and so much more efficient, more power to them, because that's a damn good price for the amount of payload that this rocket can carry. Let's see. Josh makes a comment that the sanction all technology available to Roscosmos. Wonder how big of an opportunity for other countries in the private sector. Very good point, Josh. Roscosmos really is not a very competitive operation right now anymore, simply because there are so many companies that won't, or so many countries that won't even use them anymore. So that is a lot of business to be picked up by other countries. India, of course, having picked up a lot of that business lately. Of course, SpaceX, picking up a great deal of the business as well. But it's interesting to note that some of these other emerging launch providers, other developing countries, are getting a new opportunity now that Roscosmos and their low cost launch provider solutions are no longer there as much as they used to be. What else do we got? He uses hydrogen to cool the entire, but not just the bell. Yes, that is correct. The hydrogen cools many other components of the engine besides just the bell. Let me give you a list of everything that it cools real quick. Since the question just got asked, because I don't have the greatest memory when we're talking about these things. So let me go ahead and pull that up real quick, and I'll be able to let you know exactly how the LE9 works. Bear with me just a moment here. There we go. And it is called an expander cycle, by the way. So the way it is, the cycle, the fuel is used to cool the combustion chamber as well. And it picks up heat as it does so and becomes gaseous in the process. So it's used both in terms of cooling the engine, but as it does so, it also becomes gaseous in the process. And so when you do that, then it allows the fuel to be processed more efficiently, serving again multiple purposes before it finally gets delivered into the engine and burned, along with the oxidizer, of course. So it's a complicated process. It's not easy to make this work. And as I said before, it's never been done. It's never been done on an engine on a first stage, the primary stage of a rocket before. And that's one of the reasons why Japan has had such a struggle with H3 up to this point. They've had lots of challenges in getting these engines working properly. And so it's going to be an uphill battle here very soon to see what happens tonight. It is by no means guaranteed that this thing is going to make it to orbit. I would say actually that there's a substantial chance that they're going to have an anomaly. So this is kind of tense right now. Tense for JAXA and tense really for Artemis as well. Thank you so much, Joe Blow. Really do appreciate that. The Final Frontier. Really do appreciate your support. Paul, thank you for the $15 Australian. Yeah. Once again, really appreciate it. So once again, I mean, do we have, an exciting reusable first stage that comes back and lands or anything like that? No, we don't. We don't have that with this particular rocket. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't have any innovation at all. We have, as I say, a new engines with a new process involved. Very exciting to see if this works. And also a new manufacturing process, also using a lot of commercial components, off-the-shelf components from the commercial industry to make manufacturing and building the rocket less expensive. However, that can also be a little risky when you use those kinds of components. Sometimes they aren't necessarily the most reliable. Now, of course, Japanese commercial components in general tend to be pretty good, tend to be pretty reliable, which is one of the reasons why they're doing it. But nevertheless, it is risky. And tonight's going to be tense. I'll tell you, I'm going to be tense in any event. 13, thank you so much for your support. Really do appreciate that. Just checking to make sure. I guess we may have had a little bit of my image going a bit garbly there for a second, but we're getting close to launch time. By the way, the launch window tonight is extremely narrow. Somebody just asked for a poll. Good idea, Josh. Producer, if we could put up a poll tonight, what do we think is going to happen? Do we think we're going to have an anomaly that will destroy the rocket? Do we think that it's going to be aborted? Or do you think we're going to have a successful launch? Let's go ahead and put that up there when we get a chance anyway. Best wishes and best congrats to the entire team of H3 and ALOS 3. Yes, once again, the satellite itself, ALOS 3, as you can see down there, this is a mapping satellite, and it's going to be delivered to a sun synchronous orbit, providing us with a great deal of information about the surface of our planet, geography, etc., to make building of roads more efficient, infrastructure, that sort of thing, more efficient to construct these sorts of things. A very valuable satellite. There's no question about that. It's not like this is an unimportant mission. It's very important. And actually, to put this kind of technology in harm's way on the first launch of an untried rocket, you're definitely rolling some serious dice here. Because even though this is in many ways just an upgrade of the H2, it really isn't, because the engines are brand new. And the engines involve innovations, as I've said before, have never been used before and never even attempted on the first stage of a rocket. Nobody else has tried to do this. So, big risk involved here tonight, and very exciting and very reassuring to see that there's a valuable payload being put on this anyway. It has a short fairing. It has a fairing 5.2 meters in diameter, but this is the short, not the extended fairing, so it looks a little bit more snub-nosed. This rocket theoretically can have 3 of the main engines instead of just 2, although this rocket only has 2 and 2 solid rocket boosters. So once again, this rocket is not pushing the maximum capabilities of H3 at all. This is not necessarily bottom rung performance, but it's pretty close to that. And once again, it's not delivering a very big satellite to a very high orbit either. So see what happens. But I must confess, I'm pretty excited. Man, over 400 people watching. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Please like, please subscribe. And once again, thanks so much to everybody who's been supporting me on Patreon, on PayPal. In the description, it's all there. And also in terms of super chats. Been a tough time for creators, but also in addition, I have 2 big things coming up real soon that I'll be traveling to. Number 1, to my Dynetics, for Dynetics. I'm going to be visiting them to learn more about their new Alpaca lander that they're building right now, and also learn more about their contribution to Vulcan Centaur. That will be a very exciting thing. And in addition to that, of course, the orbital launch of Starship. Nothing bigger than that, and I'll be covering that on site as well. RB, thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. I would love to film the Terran one. I really don't see that being possible, unfortunately, given the fact that I have 2 other trips ahead of me. However, I do intend to cover Relativity Space's first launch remotely. I definitely will be covering that. Wish I could be there. I really wish I could, but unfortunately, I've got 2 other trips ahead of me. That are
exclusive on it.
Pardon? Oh, it looks like we have there's exclusive coverage being handled by others anyway. So it would have been tough. Well, of course, I could have shown up personally and done it, I guess, from Cape Canaveral, but otherwise not really doable. That's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. Looks like we have 77% thinking that this is going to be a nominal launch. Well, that's how I feel as well. That I have a great deal of confidence in Mitsubishi and the quality of what they put out, in JAXA and their ability to do a good job. I think that if anything goes wrong tonight, I think it'll just be a scrub. Japan is going to make absolutely certain, JAXA is going to make absolutely certain that they are launching under the most favorable conditions possible. They're not going to take any chances, because this has taken so long to get this rocket to this point. It's very important that this launch goes off well, but at the same time, it is risky. I mean, this is a brand new rocket. new design, new engines, and first time they're launching it. And those sorts of things don't have a high percentage of success. So if JAXA does manage to pull this off tonight, it's going to, or this morning, depending on where you are, this could be quite an accomplishment, a big feather in their cap. So we are all hoping for the best, no question. Ellie in Space, yes, real quick, Jude, I'm going to thank you for reminding me of that. Ellie in Space, those of you familiar with her, if you're not, subscribe to her channel, please. She does really good coverage of disruptive technologies, including Tesla and other stuff, and also space, of course. She was out rock climbing this weekend and fell and broke her femur. It was a nasty break, and she had to go in for surgery. She has a rod in there now and such. Mobility is down to 0, of course. So in any event, she had very grim news. She came through surgery just fine, though. So I'm very happy about that. But in any event, all of us extending our best wishes to Ellie tonight, because yeah, it's been tough on her lately, that's for sure. I just texted her back and forth a bit just a couple of hours ago, though, and she is doing well and seems to be in good spirits. Raygun, thank you so much for your generous support. Really, really do appreciate that. Thanks so much. Okay, like you said, God, almost 500 people tuned in right now. You guys are blowing my mind. Thanks again. Once again, just want to emphasize the importance of this. This isn't just Japan launching an everyday satellite into sun synchronous orbit. This is a brand new rocket that has the potential of handling lunar resupply to the lunar gateway, and also delivering things to the surface of the moon for Artemis, including a mobile habitat / rover called the Toyota Moon Cruiser that has a huge amount of habitable space, 13 cubic meters worth. That's bigger actually than Crew Dragon, and the capability of traveling 1,000 kilometers between landing sites by itself. And that is a huge capability. It means that you only need to put one of these on the moon, and it will serve all of our needs for several missions. And that's huge in and of itself. And as I say, it's much more than just a rover. It's a mobile habitat because it's that big and that comfortable. So in any event, very, very big stuff coming up soon. Very big missions potentially for JAXA and for this rocket if NASA gets off their asses and chooses to engage JAXA in this process, as the NASA Office of Inspector General encouraged them to do. Put very clearly in their report that NASA needs to get JAXA and the European Space Agency, for that matter, engaged in Artemis so that this can be a truly international endeavor, and so that NASA doesn't go bankrupt trying to do this by themselves. I mean, it only makes sense. And the launch of this rocket tonight is going to be a very important moment in determining JAXA's capabilities in delivering these kinds of payloads to the moon. So this is a much bigger launch than the media has been making it out lately. The media, most of these news agencies generally only look at the surface, and they look at, oh, it's launching a satellite. Isn't that cool? And it's a new rocket. Ooh, and they don't look deeper. They don't look to the story beneath the story. And the story beneath the story with H3 is colossal. Very exciting stuff. Now we will be going within a couple of minutes. We'll go live to Japan, and we'll cover the rest of this launch. Like I say, all of this commentary for the most part is in Japanese. If you're expecting one of those super exciting SpaceX cameras mounted everywhere on the rocket kind of thing, you're going to be disappointed. That's not generally how JAXA does things. Who knows? Maybe they will with this one, but I kind of doubt it. So it's not going to be something similar to that. But nevertheless, we get to have the rare opportunity of seeing a brand new rocket utilizing brand new technology take flight. and also the first step in a country's space program when it comes to returning to the moon. This is Japan's first step in seriously contributing to Artemis, and in my opinion, that's a very big deal indeed. When will Godzilla walk in? Oh no, look out, Gojira, Gojira. By the way, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. Oh my God, I love Godzilla. that's my guilty pleasure, especially the original stuff, the Showa era Godzilla movies. Love those things. Really do. Supax, thank you so much for the $20 Canadian. James May, Our Man in Japan. That was one of my favorite series ever. James May did such a good job of digging deep into Japanese culture and learning so many things that us gaijin or foreigners tend to not learn about Japan. A lot of really in-depth analysis of some of the cool things about Japanese culture that a lot of us don't get to see. So really, really good documentary. If you haven't seen James May, Our Man in Japan, please do so. Really good stuff. Thank you so much, Liam. Really do appreciate that. Thank you so much for the $10. Really do appreciate that. Big moment coming, guys. We are now less than 2 minutes away from launch. So during the last 60 seconds, producer, you can go ahead and silence me, and we will count down those last 60 seconds. And then
I'll just push that full screen. So
yes,
and JAXA video and audio, none of our branding, anything like that.
Right, and then cut me back on about, let's say, about 30 seconds into the launch, if that's okay.
Yep, sounds good.
Everybody keep your fingers crossed, guys. Best wishes to JAXA. Huge moment coming up. And like I say, it's the media has not done justice to the importance of this. This could be the moment where Japan really picks up a big piece of Artemis for NASA and make the success of us returning to the moon to stay much more likely. Let's go live to Japan.
打ち上げ1分前です。
1 minute to launch.
フレームデフレクター冷却開始。
Flame deflector cooling is initiated.
46、45、44、43、42、41、40、39、38、37、36、35、34、33。ウォーターカーテン散水開始。
Sound suppression water system at the launch deck is activated.
27、26、25、24、23、22、21、20、19、18、17、16、15、14、フライトモードオン。
Flight mode on.
12、11、10、9、加工品トーチ点火。
Hydrogen purge igniter on.
全システム準備完
All
了。
systems go for launch.
メインエンジンスタート。
Main engine start.
1、SRB3 点火、リフトオフ。
Solid boosters ignition and lift off.
第3号搭載した H3 ロケット1001号機は2023年3月7日午前10時37分55秒に種子島宇宙センターから打ち上げられました。
We have a successful liftoff for A3 launch vehicle test flight with 803 from JAXA Tanegashima Space Center at 10:37:55 seconds a.m. on March 7th, 2023, Japan Standard Time.
打ち上げ以降、ロケットの管制は竹崎発射管制塔から竹崎総合司令塔に引き継がれています。
The operation control of A3 has been switched from launch control center to range control center.
ロケットは現在東南東方向の太平洋上へ飛行しています。
A3 is flying over Pacific Ocean to the east southeast.
打ち上げ後1分が経過しました。
It's 1 minute into flight.
ロケットは正常に飛行中、地上局のロケット追尾状況も正常。
The A3 flight is on course and the ground
Because the
station.
rocket itself is doing its job, which is what's important. Look at it go. Once again, the SRBs doing doing their job, and the main engines have a very long ISP, as most hydrogen and oxygen engines do. So those are going to have to burn for a long period of time, and they are going to have to perform nominally in order to get this rocket into the appropriate altitude. Big moment for these brand new, untried and untested. I mean, certainly tested on the ground, but never tested in flight. And things are looking spectacular thus far. Spectacular. Everything looking nominal. SRBs just separated. Everything went well. Good job, guys. Now those new engines, those brand new LE9 engines, having to do their job for a very long period of time. Once again, those things burn well over 400 seconds, a full minute longer than the Raptors burn. So we're talking a lot of time that those things need to operate at nominal performance in order to get the rocket into orbit. Everything looking very good so far. Oh man, this is awesome. Awesome. Like I say, I cannot overstate how important it is that this rocket go off well, because this rocket's capabilities of delivering substantial amounts of payload to trans-lunar injection are what's going to give JAXA the capability of helping out with Artemis and doing a huge part of that, of handling a huge part of the Artemis program, which is necessary to its long-term success. This is fantastic. Once again, Japan accomplishing something tonight that nobody else has ever done, at least thus far. Engines utilizing the expander bleed cycle on the first stage. This type of technology has never even been attempted before, and so far, they seem to be making it work perfectly on the first try. Everything looking good on telemetry. Looks like we just had fairing separation already. Fairing separation now complete. Everything looking fantastic. Oh man, this looks so good. Oh, that's wonderful. Wonderful. Once again, doesn't even begin to measure up to what SpaceX does in terms of having live cameras on board or anything like that. We're not going to get that level of excitement, that kind of media sort of excitement that we usually get out of these types of launches. But you know what? It's all right, because once again, we are getting to see a rocket utilizing technology that has never been successfully employed before, and they are making it look easy tonight. Thus far, things looking really, really good. Kenneth, thank you so much for your support. Really, really excited. Yeah, less angry. Yep, I'm always going to be less angry when a rocket launches successfully and flies successfully. Always, I think all of us space enthusiasts, us space geeks, share that in common. We all are very, very excited when these sorts of things happen. So once again, we are less than 300 seconds into the flight. And so the ISP on these engines, we're still not even close to them being completed yet in their burn cycle. Once again, these engines have a very long ISP. And as a result of the fact that hydrogen is a very efficient propellant, the most efficient propellant that we can use, actually doesn't produce the same kind of thrust, but it is very efficient. And on top of that, so as a result, obviously you get a high level of ISP out of them. And of course, this is what the RS-25 engines for the shuttle and also for SLS use, although they don't use this type of expander bleed cycle. Anton, thank you so much. Really do appreciate that. And happy birthday, Annie. Happy birthday, Annie. And a really nice night to be wishing you a happy birthday with a successful rocket launch. Super, super exciting. Are we, no, the SRBs don't land on a drone ship. No. Oh, did we just lose something? Do we have a problem?
No, it's looking good.
Are things looking at you? Okay. For a moment, we had a comment that was a little troubling, but thus far, the commentators seem to think that everything is looking good. Once again, we can never be certain about these things. I remember. Let's go ahead. We're going to go ahead and put the audio live and listen to what they have to say.
quite high into the sky. We were able to see the
They're speaking in Japanese as is to be
B3
expected.
separation, but the
it
road
is in English.
vehicle
Okay, I'm
is
sorry.
a
But I'm
delivery
listening to my
service,
producer
so
at the
we
same
must
time. So,
separate the
Wicked One,
satellite.
thank you
Otherwise,
so
we will
much.
not be
Really
able
do
to call
appreciate that.
the entire mission a
It did
success.
leave the tower
So at this point
fast.
in time, we still
It
cannot
isn't a tremendously
be
heavy
reassured as
rocket,
yet.
and those SRBs
And the
really
people in RCC
it
is
took off
keeping a
well,
close watch
like
on
a rocket,
the launch
and
vehicle
like an
flight.
extremely fast
As
rocket, to
we
be honest.
discussed
So yeah,
at the
that wasn't.
RCC,
Can't be reassured that things are nominal at
at the
present,
tracking
but they are
stations
keeping an eye
is
on
actually tracking the
So
launch
we
vehicle
aren't certain
containing
about the
Anomaly
nominal performance of the
and
rocket.
obtaining locational information.
Speed is dropping
but
off.
they are tracking. They are
To
tracking.
confirm the current position of the
data.
trajectory. So let's
It looks like we
confirm
may have
the
lost it,
trajectory.
guys. We may have an anomaly here.
Well, there we go then.
Speed. What again, Darth?
It's saying things are good.
Okay, we just had more information indicating that things are that things are still looking good, but once again, we can't. Again, you never know with these things. All we can do is hope. But yeah, velocity is dropping off, which is never good. Okay. Once again, we just had a member of my team. Thank you so much, people who know more about this than I do. It is normal on this kind of trajectory going to sun synchronous orbit for us to have a drop off in velocity. The altitude is continuing to increase, and that's what's good. We have now reached the moment that we should have had a shut off of the main engines anyway. So now we're seeing what happens with the secondary engines. But we do have Miko cut off at this point. God, I'm nervous at this point. Sure hope we don't have a
worried about data loss, velocity data. JAXA channel someone's saying in our chat, JAXA channel just now worried about velocity data.
Okay, so now we are worried about velocity. Yeah, we could be out of luck, guys. We could be out of luck, and that's not a good thing, obviously. In any event, these moments are always disappointing if they happen, and space is indeed hard. That's something that we always know. Something that we're always aware of, sadly. So in any event, once again, as I said before at the beginning of this broadcast, it was going to be very difficult to get a rocket on its first flight with new technology and expect it to work on the first try. But nevertheless, it is extremely disappointing to see an anomaly. Once again, do we know yet that this has definitely failed? We can't say that for certain. It appears to have reached 628 kilometers right now. Now, once again,
Saying it's on an off nominal data at present. They are monitoring data, but velocity data is off. It is at a correct altitude.
It's okay. So the velocity data appears to be maybe inaccurate. The altitude appears to be correct. Once again, this thing is heading to a sun synchronous orbit, and it's already up to over 600 kilometers, which is roughly the correct altitude for this to be flying to anyway. Now, if the main stage engines did not actually perform 100% as expected, it's possible that the engine on the second stage could still deliver the payload into the proper orbit. This has happened with the Atlas V, for example. The Atlas V had a problem with the main stage engines, and then the payload and the Centaur upper stage were able to compensate. So we're not done yet. Not done yet. But as everybody knows, these things happen, especially on a first launch attempt. Looks like we may have lost her. It is possible. Once again, we can't say for certain.
seem confident.
Yeah, JAXA doesn't seem very confident about it. Second stage DOA, maybe so. Have we gotten any further data on this? Does anybody else have anything else to report? Unfortunately,
Into the comms and they've gone silent.
From the telemetry track, it looked like the second stage either didn't ignite or seriously underperformed.
okay. It looks like the second stage may have had a problem, which again, that's kind of unexpected because the second stage had the engines and technology that were more established and more reliable. But once again, is it realistic to expect that these sorts of things are going to be successful on the first attempt? No, it just isn't. We didn't have it with SpaceX, obviously. SpaceX certainly had their share of hiccups when they're employing a new rocket. So this is definitely to be expected, but nevertheless, that doesn't mean that it isn't a serious disappointment. If the second stage failed to ignite completely or seriously underperformed, then it is definitely a failure. And there's nothing else to say about it besides that. Very unfortunate, very disappointing. And once again, totally unexpected. No, it's a brand new rocket. So as a result, you're going to have these sorts of things with a brand new rocket, but nevertheless, is certainly disappointing in a huge way. This is flying right out over the Pacific, so your most.
The second stage ignition hasn't been confirmed, but they're continuing to try and track data.
Now we're tracking data, but we don't have a second stage having engaged. It looks very much like we've lost it, though. I would be very surprised if it's able to recover at this stage. If indeed that was the main problem, is the LE9s performed well, and we just had a problem with the second stage. That's a less serious problem than if we're continuing to have problems with brand new engines that may be very difficult to get to work properly. If that were the problem, that would be a lot more difficult to rectify. So we'll see. Once again, this is of course very early. But yeah, if it's just if it was a failure in the second stage and not a failure with the LE9s, looks like we got more coming in right now. Waiting to see what they might be telling us. They do look very disappointed, trying to put on a brave face, but they do look disappointed. Yep, and that is a good point that John just made. Vega C from Europe failed. Launcher 1 from Virgin Orbit failed. And there's a decent chance that we're going to see relativity space fail here in a couple of days too. Given the
second engine start command was sent successfully, but they didn't receive a command back yet.
All right, so they sent a command for the engine on the second stage to engage. However, it did not. And once again, a second stage.
So there's a potential chance they might be able to recover the mission even if it's gone wrong. If I'm
it may be. It could be possible to once again, depending on the altitude that they managed to achieve with the main stage. Keep in mind, this is not a very heavy payload. And
there's no possibility of achieving the mission. They've called it a failure.
All right, so it's being announced as a failure.
Yeah.
Okay. We lost it, guys. And once again, anomalies, commonplace thing, something unfortunately that I've been reporting on a lot lately. It was it was disheartening to see that happen with Launcher 1 as well. But I guess that's what you get when you choose to report on big missions like this with the first time trying something out, the first ever attempt to get to orbit from Europe. That failed, and oftentimes you do fail with your first try with things. First ever attempt to launch a brand new rocket utilizing new technology. Again, not shocking, but at the same time, deeply disappointing. But nevertheless, This is something that that every launch provider is prepared to face, and I'll continue to track the progress of Mitsubishi and JAXA. We'll see what happened with this launch. I'll make sure to let everybody know. And until we have a successful launch of this very promising rocket that I really still feel is going to bring great things to the future of spaceflight, I urge all of you to stay angry about space. Producer, check.
Yeah, I'm here. It looks like they're cutting their stream. Gordon, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
It looks like JAXA's going to can their stream.
Okay. Well, I just concluded. Sorry.
Sorry, no problem.
All right. Sorry. Producer stepped away, guys. Once again, stay angry.